Hello and welcome to Don's Trust Election 2024, Meet the Candidates. My name is Graham Stacey and in this session we're meeting Dominic Proctor. Hi Dom, to start off, could you please tell us a bit about yourself and why we should vote for you in around 2 minutes, please?
Thanks. And it probably is Dom rather than Dominic. Everyone calls me Dom. So that's fine. In fact, apart from my grandchildren, call me Papa Dom, which causes great hilarity everywhere. So, but don't call me Papa Dom. Dom's fine. Well, local person, obviously, and I put in my manifesto the fact that I've been following the football club now for God knows how many years, 40 years probably, in various stadiums. The background to my role, my life here is really that I had a job before I retired, which meant that I was always traveling around the world, to be honest. I mean, I had an international job. Always made it back at weekends, but never really focused on the local community. I retired a couple of years ago, and now what I do is actually spend a lot of time in community stuff. So apart from coming along to Plough Lane, I chair the Polka Theatre down in Wimbledon, which is, if you don't know, is the foremost in the country, maybe you could argue Europe, children's theatre that there is. And that's a fabulous thing to do. I'm very involved in various local charities. I play at the local golf club. I'm kind of very much into the communities. Having spent most of my life abroad, I'm now very focused kind of locally. Grandchildren live nearby, 4 kids all live nearby. And there we go, proper Wimbledon guy, yeah.
Great, thank you. Okay, we're now going to move on to the 5 questions that we're asking every candidate. Question number 1, we're estimated to be running at a net loss of around 1.5 million for 2023. And we're running at annual losses of about between 1 and 2 million. What would be your plan to plug those losses?
Well, first of all, being an external candidate rather than someone seeking re-election, I'm not privy to all of the latest figures. You said 2023, and as far as I can tell from published data, that's not unusual. I mean, amongst clubs in our league. Clearly, there's a plan which got rejected in terms of the equity release part of it to make some more funds from selling more equity. And I couldn't help but notice that notwithstanding the 50.1, there's still 6% out there. And I guess there's a plan to release some of that equity if you can find a home for it. Other than that, I think the board have listed out. I mean, I've studied the strategy documents that have recently been published, which look perfectly reasonable to me. The one I think that has probably a lot of headroom for growth, a lot of support to revenue growth, is actually the telling of our story. I think if we're local people and we always follow the club, you cannot almost take it for granted what this club's achieved, not just in the last 22 years, but before that too. It's an extraordinary story, and I suspect that there is revenue or capital to be made from telling that story in a more compelling way to a wider group of people. I think there's a real asset there that we probably leave underexploited.
Great, thank you. Okay, question number 2. If you could change one thing about the Don's Trust, what would it be and why?
Well, the Don's Trust. I mean, the Don's Trust seems to be doing a very good job. I mean, I think I think as a fan, again, I'm not an insider, perhaps some clarity to the members about exactly where the demarcation lies between the Don's Trust and the PLC board. I know that can get fuzzy. I spent a lot of time in my working life on the board of the Rugby Football Union, for example, England Rugby, just came off that. And we had a very similar situation. And as soon as you get a lack of clarity about who's responsible for what, then people from the outside get worried, get suspicious. They don't quite know who to go to, who's responsible. Is it a fudge? Is it transparent? I would say just in terms of the way we're organised, maybe some more clarity around where one starts and the other one finishes. That would be a good place to begin.
Thank you. Question number 3. Could you give us a summary of your stance on fan ownership and how you think we can thrive as a club under the current ownership model?
Well, I think we definitely can. Obviously, I do, and I've made myself very, very clear on that in the manifesto. We are a fans club, and we should always, at least for the very foreseeable future. The trouble is in sport, you never know what's around the corner. You know, another pandemic, a restructuring, the government's football bill going through. Wherever you look in sport, all sports are in some state of turmoil. Cricket, rugby, football. I mean, everything is always constantly changing. So you don't know what the landscape's going to be in a few years' time. But as far as the eye can see, we absolutely, definitely should stay as a fan-owned club. I have no doubt about that. whatsoever. It's our USP. And I'm going back to my point about the story and the raising of funds behind the story. I think that's crucial. The second half of your question was,
and how do you think we can thrive under this?
How can we thrive on that? Well, because it's unique. I mean, I think people outside of Wimbledon, as we're playing against them, love Wimbledon. I mean, they love the football club here. They love what we stand for. They like what we do. I mean, to me, it absolutely was epitomised on Tuesday night. I'm sure a lot of people watching this were at the game against Accrington, which was a pretty, it wasn't the most compelling game, was it? It was freezing cold. Everyone was down. It wasn't a great atmosphere, but they kept on going, and and kind of got there in the end. It was almost like a little kind of parable for the whole story of Wimbledon. I mean, it was adversity. It was crap conditions. Things weren't going our way, but the guys kept on going and going and going, and rescued a point. I mean, to me, that sort of summed up where we come from and where we're going.
Okay, thank you. Number 4. How would you describe the trust's standing amongst members as it stands, and how would you seek to improve that relationship?
It seems to me that it's under a bit of pressure, and I'm taking this from the people I speak to, myself, my own sort of friend group, and also looking at some of the chat lines that there are out there. And I know that's not totally representative. It's probably a core of people who are very passionate about posting their views on the site. I think transparency and clarity, again, back to my point before about what it is that we stand for, what do we do, and who does it, is an absolutely key thing here. I do. I really do. And I think the more the trust, which does wonderful work, probably more than in some ways it was designed to do in terms of what it does versus the PLC board. I mean, it does a hell of a lot more than simply the oversight role. And I think getting some real clarity around that and the fact that what it contributes to the football club in a transparent way would be the first big step. I don't think it's clear.
Thank you.
Quite honestly.
Thank you. Question number 5. Do you believe the Johns Trust Board is elected to make decisions for the members, or elected to listen to members on an ongoing basis? And would you be looking to consult more or less?
More. Yeah, more, definitely more. I mean, I think that's the whole point, isn't it? If it's a fan-owned club, then it follows that you've got to listen to the fans, and the mechanism to listen to fans and to get those opinions and to garner those opinions has to be the trust and listening. So I think the primary role of the trust is not simply to assume what the members want and to represent that to the football club and to other stakeholders. No, I think the primary responsibility is to listen to the fans. I mean, all of them, all of the members, and beyond that, actually, fans in general, to get a very clear understanding of where the fan base is and where it wants to go. So I think that way around. I don't think we can be a fan-based club, a fan-owned club, if we don't listen to the fans more and more and more.
Okay, so thank you. We're also asking each candidate one question directly related to their manifesto.
Yeah.
We'd like to give you 3 minutes to answer this one.
Right.
In your manifesto, you say, it is clear that for a club like ours to survive and prosper, we require sustained growth in revenue, which must be reinvested back into the teams being plural. Could you tell us which teams you're referring to and looking to apply that philosophy to, whether that's men, women or youth teams, and how much of a priority playing budgets would take for you as a board member if elected?
Yeah, good question. I think, well, first of all, I stand fully behind the recently published new strategy document, which it doesn't give very specific timelines, I think, but it talks about achieving those goals behind the men's team and the women's team and the age group teams, or the academy. I think it specifically references to. So it's all three, and I think that's absolutely right. Now that's obviously more expensive and more challenging, but I mean, we set our stall out on that, and we must follow it. We shouldn't be sacrificing the one for the other. I think particularly noteworthy is actually the investment we are making or plan to make under that strategy into the academy. And I say that because unlike I think any other team in our league, we are doing really good business in terms of in the transfer market. We're developing players and selling them on. No, I don't think anybody else is doing it as well as we are. And again, I'm an outsider looking in a little bit. I'm not on the inside of this, so I don't have all the facts at my disposal, clearly. But to me, growing the academy as a source of revenue as well as a source of players has got to be a very, very, very smart move. So I think the answer is all three. there's a straight line equation, isn't there, between the playing budget, going back to your second question, second half of the question, between how much you spend on the playing squad and where you're likely to end up in the league. Now, clearly, there's some outliers around that. I mean, there always are in any mathematical formula. But the fact is there is a very close correlation between the expenditure and the return when it comes to football at our level. So if you're saying, if you're trying to estimate how much more is needed, you've got to be saying it's certainly a seven-figure sum into the men's team. And it has to be, and I think this is the key thing which often fans overlook, it's got to be sustainable. There is no point in raising £1 million extra, £2 million extra, which is possible to do through the fan base for 1 year, because you go up and you come straight back down again unless you can sustain it. So I think it's across all three teams, but it needs to be sustainable revenue. I'd rather have sustainable revenue at a lower level than a windfall total coming in because frankly it comes in and it goes out again.
Great. Right, well, that's all our questions. Thank you for your time, Dom Proctor, and all the best with your campaign. Viewers can watch candidates' interviews on our YouTube channel, and to vote, viewers should have a link in their inboxes. Deadline to vote is December the 3rd, and you can find all candidate manifestos at thedonstrust.org. In the meantime, thank you very much for watching.
Thanks very much. Thank you.